Shalom, shalom, call halal, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, double honesty, the apostles and the elders of the great millstone who rule well. So I taste the brother on the four corners of the earth, pushing the word of truth and sincerity. Today's GMS motivation video is going to be on institutional racism and and particularly the educational aspect of institutionalized racism and how it affects our people, in the everyday life, especially the youth, growing into adulthood and how they're perceived in society, and counted out, you know, as a subject of institutionalized racism. Our people are usually, everyone's heard it when they're young, dead before or dead or in jail before 21, um, you know, uh, usually doing life in prison, never amount to anything, shit that they say about, niggas coming up in the world. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. It says institutionalized racism from Wikipedia. So institutionalized racism, also known as institutionalized racism, is a form of racism expressed in the practice of social and political institutions. Institutional racism is also racism by individuals or informal social groups, governed by behavioral norms that support racist thinking and foment active racism. It is reflected in disparities regarding wealth, income, criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, and education, among other things. Whether implicitly or explicitly expressed, institutional racism occurs when a certain group is targeted and discriminated against based on race. Institutional racism can go unnoticed as it is not always explicit and can be overlooked. Right? Because institutionalized racism is really racism on the fly. Racism that flies under the radar. You know, they're not going to tell you that they're openly racist, but the actions that they perform, that affect your everyday life are in fact racist. Let me see. Let me go down for a second. I want to go into this affirmative action just really quick. Now, as we all know, the affirmative action was a bill that was signed for basically people of color to get into these higher institutions, higher white Ivy League institutions, and of higher learning. But the thing is, President Bush, he actually, when he enacted the affirmative action, he tried to actually pull that out. And what he did was he enacted quotas. So there's only a certain, so you can hire, you can admit, a black, and Native American, but only a certain amount to keep your institution, to keep the what do you call it, the image of your institution up, and only hire the ones that actually what do you call it, that adhere to our image. That's where you get the jakes that don't remember where they come from, the ones that try super hard to assimilate to society. Those are the ones that we want in our schools and our institutions. Not those niggas from the street corner, the niggas from the hood, but the niggas that act more like us. It says another impediment to affirmative action, another impediment to removing barriers to diversity occurred in the 1990s when former President George H.W. Bush attempted to eliminate affirmative action during his term of office. He ordered the use of quotas, preferences set aside on the basis of race, sex, religion, or national origin be abolished in hiring. Right, so those quotas, he wanted to destroy those quotas. Like, look, ain't no affirmative action no more. They can hire whoever they want to, and they want to hire white people, they can hire white people. Congress responded with the Civil Rights Bill Act of 1991, which only covered the terms of settling cases where discrimination had previously been confirmed. So even that didn't help. They filed a law, a Civil Rights Act, but that only helps when you have a previous case. If it's a new case, you're shit out of luck. It had been near impossible to prove a case of institutional discrimination in the courts, and many other cases were terminated upon imposition of a consent decree. So, like that saying goes, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court. So you couldn't even prove acts of institutional discrimination. That was what the Civil Rights Act of 1991 was for, and they knew that. So it looked like the Supreme Court or Congress was helping the African American community, but in turn, it was actually working with, the president. It says this fueled the rise of 1996 in California Proposition 209, a ballot initiative abolishing affirmative action in California universities to counteract what conservative critics saw as reverse racism. So that was the birth of reverse racism, you know, enacting the affirmative action. This is where members of a minority group get preferential treatment over the majority as a remedy for past wrongs, and the voters can be swayed by specious arguments against this to vote the anti affirmative action measure into law. This closed down the avenues affirmative action initiatives had opened for blacks to have race counted as a factor when accounting for different rates of acceptance to universities. So all that was being shut down, and consequently to employment discrimination lawsuits that sought redress from discriminatory hiring. You know, it says this is where the arguments for redress for past wrongs under the catch-up provisions no longer worked in favor of claimants. So they were trying their hardest to get rid of the affirmative action that was created. So it no longer worked in our favor. You know, and so they're doing everything that they can to keep the blacks and the Native Americans uneducated. Now let me go down to this little section in education. It says in education, standardized testing, like those statewide tests that you would have, twice a year in grammar school, has also been considered a form of institutional racism because it is believed to be biased in favor of people from particular socio-cultural backgrounds. Some minorities have consistently tested worse than whites on virtually all standardized tests, even after controlling for socioeconomic status, while others have tested consistently better. The achievement gap between white and black students mirrors the gap between the two groups in a variety of IQ tests, many of which are designed to be culturally neutral. The cause of the achievement gaps between blacks and Hispanic, white, and Asian students has yet to be fully elucidated, which means to be solved, because they put us in these low income neighborhoods and they put us in the ghettos. They put us in these basically these ghost towns, where there are virtually no resources for anyone to better themselves. And the cause of that are students who are children that lack attention spans, that don't care about learning and getting education and knowledge, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. You know, they see what they see every day in the neighborhood, which are drug dealers slinging crack, basketball players, football players, um, rappers, singers. You know, they don't see role models that actually have knowledge, wisdom, and understanding because of the background that they have been placed in. It's called social engineering. I want to go to this higher education clause real quick. It says in the 1960s, students of color started attending colleges and universities in record numbers after the passage of the Civil Rights and Higher Education Acts. However, the obstacles of integration in predominantly white institutions of higher education led to unforeseen obstacles for faculty and students of color working and studying in such environments. According to a review of educational research, tension and violence followed. One reason being the lack of preparedness of many colleges and universities to teach a diversity of students. Initially, it was also difficult for many black students to attend college due to the poor quality of education in segregated schools. Right? So it's put us in segregated schools where we have worse education systems than they have. Outdated books, outdated technology, you know. So we don't learn at the pace that they learn, you know. And it's all, like I said, it's all by design. It's all social engineering, So the next generation that comes along will be, deliberately dumbed down, while the Edomite generations are being constantly excelled. So that's how they create this so-called achievement gap between blacks, Hispanics, white and Asian students, which are Israelites, uh, Moabites, Ammonites, and Edomites. The 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision was the beginning of the process of desegregation and the elimination of de jure discrimination. However, it was hard to determine the challenges that the process would present and the obstacles that would continue to this day. Both verbal and physical abuse continue. The increase of racial tension and racial incidents in institutions of higher education is said to be due to the lack of knowledge, experience, and contact with diverse peers. Peer group influence, increased competition and stress, the influence of off campus groups and media, alcohol use, changing values, fear of diversity, and the perception of unfair treatment, you know? And that goes both ways, because what Esau has been doing to Jake for all these years, they have a natural resentment towards Esau, and of course Esau has a natural resentment towards Jake, especially since Jake's infiltrating all their institutions that are supposed to be for them, So of course they're gonna feel some type of way, and there's gonna be fighting, there's gonna be alcohol use, there's all these things are going to happen, you know. But the thing is that the affirmative action really only made things worse because we're not even supposed to be desegregated. We're supposed to be segregated according to the laws of the Most High. You know, if we were segregated, none of this institutionalized racism and this this unfair treatment and affirmative action, all this crap wouldn't even have to be be put into realization. Or for lack of better terms, But the thing is, Esau is in control right now. So even if we were segregated, it's very hard to create a quality system of education. Under the devil, who designs the whole world to keep Israel in a state of dumbfoundedness. So that's really all I wanted to read on the institutionalized racism document. But I do have a quick video. It's a video from Vice News, and it's about the students in Detroit, how the institutionalized racism basically is rampant in Detroit, and they're not getting any type of resources and any type of help with education. So I wanted to play this really quick, and it's all by design. The state of
Back in
the state of Michigan is what do you call it? Purposely, withholding educational resources from the inner city youth in Detroit, which are mostly Jake, man. It's mostly Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and the rest of the tribes.
September, 7 Detroit students filed a lawsuit against Governor Rick Snyder and other state education officials. They argue that the state of Michigan is violating students' constitutional rights by depriving them of literacy. Yesterday, the state filed a motion to dismiss the case, claiming that there is no fundamental right to literacy. But the court battle is far from over. A week after the case was filed, Jay Caspian Kang visited one of the 6 schools named in the complaint.
Hello? You at the bus stop. Right now I'm waiting on the bus, getting ready to go to school. Gotta get up a little bit earlier than everybody else because I live so far from the school. So, yeah.
Osborne Evergreen Academy is a high school on the east side of Detroit. 89% of its students aren't reading at grade level, which is typical for a Detroit public school. Jamarie Hall is a senior at Osborne. He's classmates with one of the unnamed plaintiffs in the lawsuit. What's your favorite subject in school?
Math.
And you took pre-calculus last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what math class are you in right now?
Pre-calculus again.
Why did that happen? Why are you taking the class over again?
Really, I don't think it's enough, even another teacher probably available to teach the next math class. And even if it is, it's probably not even no books for that math class.
Mark Rosenbaum, one of the lawyers leading the case, says that this is the first time anyone's argued that literacy is a basic right protected by the 14th Amendment.
Literacy means the capacity to read, to learn, and to understand. That's the argument here. The 14th Amendment is about equal citizenship, equal access to the institutions of a government, equal opportunity to learn, equal treatment within the schools, which after all are the engines of the democracy and the great equalizer. And that's what the argument is here, that all children, no matter their race, no matter their class, have access to literacy.
The suit argues that schools aren't equipped for learning. Problems range from teacher staffing, lack of books, and rundown, unsafe facilities.
Like the bathroom sinks don't work. There's no doors on the bathroom. The classes, it's subs. It's so many subs, different subs every day. Water fountain doesn't work. It's just books, no books. Books old, torn up, got to get taped up. The teacher got to put the assignment on the board and everybody got to copy it down just because it's not enough paper to make the copies. The school be so hot in the summer, so cold in the winter.
Why do you think the schools are in this condition?
I think people don't care, and I think that they think that we don't care. Like, that everybody just on their agreement that it's cool. But it's not like that. It's not like that at all.
So yeah, again, they're suing the students actually. So again, the students are actually suing the state of Michigan because because they want an education, and it because like you said, there are certain facilities in the schools that don't work. The books are old, ripped, torn up. There are no resources, because look what they are. They're in Detroit, Michigan, which was socially engineered to be a ghost town, you know. And most people that live there are blacks and Native Americans from the start. So of course, their schools are going to be in that type of condition, but the schools are in that type of condition so they can go from the school to the prison system, so it can be put back on the stock, back on the stock market, and be traded as slaves, man, you know. This is Romans chapter 13, verse 10. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law, And they, and everybody claims it's love for all and love everybody, and we're all human beings. Man, no. Because if that were so, these things wouldn't be going on, and these things wouldn't have a strong presence in the Israelite community, man. This is about keeping the black Sidons and Native Americans and children of Israel at bay, while Esau controls the world, and keeping us from obtaining the blessing which is the kingdom of heaven. That's what this is all about, So, and that's a big reason why they created this social engineering, which is what do you call it? Which is BET and rap and black culture, And this is this article from Huffington Post about, like I said, the school to prison complex, which it's called the school to prison pipeline, and this is created in order to keep the black Asian Americans docile and institutionalized as well, with religion, because a lot of black Asian Native Americans that go into prison, are are either coerced into Christianity or Rastafarianism or Islam, some type of religion, to keep you away from your true heritage, which are Hebrew Israelites. The more time you spend in jail, the less time that you have to figure out who you truly are. So this is a article from Huffington Post. The school to prison pipeline is institutional racism. So what is the school to prison pipeline? The school to prison pipeline is a no-nonsense trend in American education where children are directed straight from the classroom and into bureaucratic clutches of the criminal justice system. The phenomenon manifests itself in disciplinary practices and zero-tolerance policies that criminalize unruly behavior and minor infractions such as truancy, graffiti, or violating a school dress code. Not only that, it involves the presence of security guards and police on campus, breaking up trivial playground fights with a billy club and a taser, So they actually, and I've had police, we had policemen in our high school, man. And the minute I got to ninth grade and started seeing the police in the high school, they're meant to intimidate. They're there to intimidate the blacks and the Latins, and the Native Americans, and to protect the white and Asians, the white students, any nationality that's not Black, Latin, Native American that doesn't have that stigma of a young monster, I want to say, or a super predator, they protect, It says, "Gone are the days of blackboard jungle when you could give your paper tiger of a schoolmaster some delinquent lip and get away with it. These days, interrupting teacher during class might get you pepper sprayed and hauled off to jail in full restraints to face the full wrath of the juvenile justice system." And that's true, because I've actually seen that happen. Um, I've seen people get hauled off by security guards in class, and you don't see them till the next school year because they've been in jail. They have a misdemeanor for uh for disrupting class, you know, which that's totally out of control. That only happens to the blacks and Native Americans uh by design due to the conditions that they've grown up in, you know, due to the condition that they live in, you know, due to the non-examples that they don't see every day, you know, the no men in the household, the broken families, the having no money, you know. It says, "Whatever happened to detention after school? It got farmed out to the cops. Unbelievable? No sports fans, only in America. Where did these zero tolerance policies or zero sense come from? Fear of Columbine style massacres ushered in the modern era of paranoia and punishment in the classroom. Now the open halls of education lead to the closed doors and barred grills of the prison cell. School has become a police state and a hallway, it's like in a halfway house to jail. It is a great act of violence committed against youth by adults. Little surprise that many kids caught in the school to prison pipeline come from low income families, have learning disabilities, or histories of abuse and neglect. Indeed, they are the ones who might benefit from well rounded education, right? And these are mostly blacks, Blacks, and Native American households, man. You know, especially the ones that have learning disabilities, because we are the ones that are basically are being poisoned above everyone else. So we're born with those learning disabilities, you know, due to, like I said, due to certain social engineering, man, like the crack epidemic of the 1980s, you know, heroin, cocaine, you know, even marijuana. You know, that so-called war on drugs that was created by you know, Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, and those drugs are being flown from the CIA from Brazil into our neighborhoods to give us that you know, that low income, that illusion, that disadvantage, you know, over the other under the other the disadvantage of under the other nations, you know, if I'm saying that correctly. They give the other nations the advantage over us, Slovakia, you know. So, and it says histories of abuse and neglect. That could be drug abuse, you know. That could be any type of mental abuse, you know, being raped, you know, seeing murders happen before your eyes, things like that, man. You know, which is also a fact of, you know, those drugs, the gangs, things of that nature, that are all created by Esau. It says, indeed, they are alienated, excluded. Instead, they are alienated, excluded, criminalized, and written off by society. So, what exactly is a school to prison pipeline? Simple. It's just another term for institutional racism and incarcerating disadvantaged African American school children instead of educating them. It's happening right now, every day in every town and city in America, and yet there is an absence of public outrage. No, because there's a media blackout, man. There are things being reported, you know, such as articles, such as certain documentaries, but no one cares, man, because the fact of the matter is, us blacks and Native Americans are under a curse, man. Us Israelites are under a curse by Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. And we're not going to get under that curse until we come back to law, statutes, and commandments. Other than that, the whole world is going to pound on us and pound on us and pound on us until the Lord comes back to destroy them. Plain and simple. It says Jim Crow in the classrooms of 21st century America. Surely not. Yes, unfortunately, young black kids, males especially, have always been a threat of punishment by unhinged authority figures afraid of school violence. The figures are shocking, and racial disproportionality in the school to prison pipeline is a black and white fact. But black, white, or whatever, it's an aberrant policy and practice to criminalize children and pollute the future waters of society. You know? Let's see. Oh, like I said, I want to go down a couple paragraphs because, like I said earlier, You are to be traded on the stock market, and actually be profited from. Like they have something called convict leasing, which is basically has been an act since before the Jim Crow laws. It's actually um, a law that was in effect that went into effect after slavery. The post-slavery laws. Um, and what that is basically is you're sent to prison, for a petty crime, and then you're leased out or contracted out to certain businesses, and you're basically forced to work for free, you know, and you're basically forced to work all long hours of the day, just like you're in slavery. So actually, slavery never left, and that Jim Crow or that and that convict leasing is still evident today in most of your prison systems. And it's a funny. And there's a movie you can watch. It's hilarious. It actually is a funny movie. But they made a joke out of it, but it's really not a joke. And the movie's called Life with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. As Bernie Mac and a couple guys in it. But and it's a very funny movie, but it's about convict leasing in the 1920s. You know, and how basically they're throwing us back into slavery, and they give you life sentences on purpose so that you can never get out of prison. So that you can continue to help the industrial prison complex. That's why blacks, and Native Americans get more time for the crimes than whites in other nations. Because they're throwing us back into that slavery. It says every year the U.S. spends $10,500 per child on education and 88,000 on each child incarcerated. So it's actually cheaper to throw you in prison. I mean, Slakia. It's actually cheaper to educate you, but they spend more money on you in prison and they get more return on investment. 66% of children who have been incarcerated never return to school. The U.S. incarcerates 5 times more children than any other nation state in the world. Right. Because it costs more to incarcerate you. So they're going to get all that money back. And they're going to get every penny and every cent out of you they can. It says the U.S. incarcerates 5 times more children than any other nation state in the world. Is this the best that America can offer the child in the 21st century? And then the rest of the article goes into trying to reform, talking about reforming schools and things like that. But basically, man, they're using this institutionalized racism, basically which is racism in disguise, to basically use it as another method to keep our nation in subjection, and it's a part of the curse, man. And this whole prison pipeline, or this whole prison complex that's made up of the blacks, Latins, and Native Americans is actually a curse. This is Isaiah chapter 42, verse 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. Robbed of what? Robbed of their nationality, robbed of knowledge, wisdom, understanding, robbed of their God, and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, traps, and such trap are the like one trap we just got to going over is the United States education system. That is a trap, to keep us disillusioned and stupid. And they are hid in prison houses. And not only are they hid in prison houses as in actual prisons, but they're hidden prisons for their minds, man, because they're snared in the holes, which are the traps, which is the educational system, because they are robbed and spoiled, robbed of their nationality, who they truly are. So of course they're going to be in prison houses. They're going to be thrown in the prisons, and they're going to be in prisons for their minds, man. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, right? Because they get thrown right back into slavery, man. They're fed on. And other nations are feeding on us like leeches for a spoil, and none saith restore. So there's no one that's going to say restore, man, until Yahweh Shem Al Shai comes back. So, Al Sharpton and all these other so-called black leaders, man, they can't save us. The next president of the United States can't save us. Only Yahweh Shem Al Shai can save us from this turmoil that we are in. And because of that, Yahweh Shem Al Shai is going to destroy Esau. This is Zechariah chapter 1, verse 15. And I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. For I was but a little displeased, but they helped forward the affliction. And this institutionalized racism, this right here, And the school to prison complex. This is part of them affording the affliction, man. Because they took us from chattel slavery to mental slavery, back to chattel slavery. That's a hell of a cycle, man. So with that, I just wanted to shed some light on the institutionalized racism, in the education systems, in the belly of the beast. So with that, I want to give call halal Yahweh Bashim Shai, about unto the apostles and the elders of great millstone on the well. Salutations to the brothers on the four corners of the earth, pushing the word of truth and sincerity. Shalom.